August 7, 1942. The skies above Guadalcanal roar like a forge. Below, US Marines wade through churning surf toward Japanese-held beaches, while overhead, hundreds of aircraft tear through clouds in one of the Pacific's earliest major air battles. Among them, a Mitsubishi A6M0 dances through the air like a blade. Its pilot, Petty Officer Saburō Sakai, is already a legend in his squadron. A man known for impossible kills and ice-cold precision far below, a formation of US Navy SBD Dauntless dive bombers climbs from an attack run. Their crews think the sky is clear. They're wrong. Sakai dives. His Zero screams through the clouds. But just as he lines up his shot, a burst of tracers erupts from the rear gunner of one of the bombers. Harold Jones, 21 years old, grips the twin .30 caliber Brownings and fires instinctively. The rounds stitch the air, and one lucky bullet shatters the Zero's canopy glass, and metal explode. Sakai jerks back, hit in the head. For a heartbeat, the world disappears in white light and pain. Blood blinds his right eye. His hands tremble. The Zero lurches upward, almost vertical, and for those seconds, Sakai's mind slips into darkness. Jones watches through his gun sight as the Japanese plane drifts away, smoke curling from its fuselage. To him, it's a confirmed kill, another enemy falling to the Pacific. He turns back to his pilot, shouting over the engine roar, "Got him!" The Dauntless formation reforms and heads for the carrier Enterprise, but far behind them, high in the empty blue, the dead Zero steadies. Saburō Sakai, bleeding and half-conscious, grips the stick with both hands. Somewhere inside, the will to live reignites. He's 560 miles from base, nearly 5 hours of flying ahead. Any other pilot would have gone down. But Sakai was forged in a school where failure meant disgrace, and death was preferable to shame. Born in 1916 in Saga Prefecture, the son of a poor farming family descended from samurai, Sakai had grown up in hardship. When his father died, he was 11. At 16, with no future but toil, he enlisted in the Imperial Navy. Years later, after brutal flight training that broke stronger men, he graduated top of his class, personally honored by Emperor Hirohito with a silver watch. By 1942, he had fought across China and the South Pacific, credited with more than 28 kills, a master of the Zero's deadly grace. But now, on this hot August morning, that grace was fading fast. The canopy drips red. Sakai can feel blood trickling down his cheek, soaking his flight suit. His right eye is gone. He can see only blinding light on that side. The left eye pulses in pain. The Zero trembles with every movement. He levels the wings. Each second demands every ounce of control he has. The sun glints off the ocean below, making it nearly impossible to distinguish sky from sea. His head throbs, consciousness flickering. A dark thought intrudes. End it now. A dive into the blue, a flash, and it's over. Samurai tradition held that an honorable death was preferable to capture or failure. For a moment, Sakai tips the stick forward. The ocean swells closer. But then he sees, in his mind's eye, the faces of his squadron. Young pilots who look to him for leadership. If I die now, he thinks, who will guide them? He pulls back on the stick. The Zero steadies. Sakai decides to live. The distance to Rabaul is 560 miles, 5 hours of open water with no radio, one working eye, and an aircraft leaking fuel. He ties a cloth around his head to slow the bleeding. He flies by instinct and memory, following the sun's position to judge direction. Every few minutes, he slaps himself awake when his vision starts to fade. The tropical air sears his wound. The Zero's engine hums like a lullaby of death, threatening to lull him into eternal sleep. Hours pass. The sky turns from blue to orange as the sun begins to sink. Finally, land. The jagged coast of New Britain appears. Rabaul is near, his engine coughs, but he holds altitude, whispering, just a little more. He lands hard, skidding down the runway. Ground crewmen race toward the Zero, expecting to find a corpse. But Sakai pushes the canopy open himself and shouts for his commander. Before accepting medical aid, he gives his full after-action report, describing every engagement in detail. Only then does he collapse. Doctors are horrified. The bullet entered above his eye and exited near his ear. They tell him survival is unlikely, and that even if he lives, he'll never fly again. But Saburō Sakai defies them. Months of agony follow: infection, blindness in one eye, endless rehabilitation. Yet by 1944, he's back in the cockpit. Flying one-eyed, he fights again over Iwo Jima. Each mission is a miracle, each landing a triumph of willpower. When Japan finally surrenders in 1945, Sakai is still alive, one of the last of the old samurai pilots. He has nothing left to prove. Yet his story is far from over. The war ends, and with it, the empire he once served. Japan lies in ruins, cities are ash, the military dissolved. For men like Sakai, there are no parades, only silence. He returns to civilian life, marrying and opening a small printing shop in Tokyo. Many veterans can't find work, so he hires them, giving purpose to men forgotten by a nation eager to rebuild. Slowly, the warrior learns peace. Haunted by what he's seen, Sakai turns to Buddhism. He vows never to kill again, not even a mosquito. The same hands that once gripped a fighter's control stick now fold prayer beads. Yet in quiet moments, his mind drifts back to that flight over Guadalcanal. The man who shot him, the bullet that nearly ended everything, remains a mystery. Then, decades later, his story finds new life. His autobiography, Samurai, is published in English in the 1970s and becomes a bestseller in the United States. American veterans, once his sworn enemies, begin writing letters to him. They call him brave, honorable, a fellow pilot. Invited to a reunion of the American Fighter Aces Association in San Diego, Sakai arrives as the only Japanese pilot present. Many are skeptical at first. How could the man who once fought them now walk among them? But when he speaks, the room goes silent. He describes the fear, the duty, and the loneliness of combat. And as he finishes, one American ace steps forward and says, through a translator, "Tell Saburō that I read his book twice. The feelings he described are the same I felt. We were enemies, yes, but the same kind of men." Something inside Sakai softens. He realizes that across the vast divide of war, they shared the same sky and the same pain. In the early 1980s, historian Henry Sakida digs deeper into Sakai's history. Through combat reports and squadron logs, he identifies the man behind the gun that nearly killed Sakai. Harold Jones, rear gunner aboard an SBD from the USS Enterprise. In 1983, Sakida arranges a meeting in California. 41 years have passed. Two men, once locked in mortal combat, are about to stand face to face. When Sakai walks into the room, he is no longer the lean ace of 1942. His hair is silver, his posture calm, his face marked by a faint scar near his right eye. In his hands, he carries a small package, his old flight helmet. Jones, now in his 60s, rises from a chair, his own hair white. The two men look at each other for a long moment. No words, just the weight of decades between them. Finally, Sakai opens the package. Inside lies the faded leather helmet, the same one he wore during the battle over Guadalcanal. A small, perfect hole pierces it above the right eye, Jones's bullet. He hands it to Jones. The American turns it over, speechless. The evidence is undeniable. His bullet had found its mark, yet somehow fate had allowed both men to live. Sakai smiles gently. "Because of that shot," he says, "I learned how precious life is." They talk for hours, about the war, their families, the years that followed. Jones recounts seeing the Zero spin upward and vanish. Believing he'd ended a man's life, Sakai describes the flight home, the pain, the stubbornness that kept him alive. Both laugh softly at the absurdity of it. That one bullet, one impossible flight, would lead to this moment of peace. Before leaving, they shake hands. Cameras flash, but the gesture isn't for show. It's genuine. Later, when a journalist asks Sakai how it felt to meet the man who shot him, he answers simply, "To me, the war was never personal." In the years that followed, Sakai became a public advocate for peace. He lectured in schools, telling young people, never give up. The same spirit that carried him 560 miles half-blind became his lesson to the next generation. He returned often to America, attending air shows and reunions with veterans who once fought to kill him. He even worked briefly with Microsoft as a consultant on Combat Flight Simulator 2, ensuring every Zero handled just as it had in 1942. But in Japan, not everyone admired him. Some old veterans called him a traitor for befriending the enemy. Others resented his criticism of Japan's wartime actions. Sakai didn't care. He'd seen enough death to know that honesty mattered more than pride. On September 22, 2000, Saburō Sakai attended a dinner at Atsugi Naval Air Station as an honored guest of the US Navy. In the middle of the evening, he suffered a heart attack. He died that night, age 84, surrounded by American officers who considered him a friend. Harold Jones outlived him by several years, passing away in 2008. Their friendship, forged from fire and forgiveness, remains one of the most extraordinary reconciliations in modern military history. Two men who tried to kill each other in 1942 met in 1983, shared stories, and left the world a lesson. That even in the aftermath of war, humanity can still prevail. One bullet, one impossible flight, 41 years. And finally, a handshake between enemies who had become brothers.